man. Raising expectations, huh? Yeah, so I'm excited to talk about Alpenglow. So this is going to be the new consensus protocol of Solana. A little bit of a backstory. So we founded ANSA Research, or the research branch in ANSA, like half a year ago. And since then, we have been working on getting a new consensus protocol. This should be interesting for everybody, but basically it will affect everybody. So it's not just myself, it's also Kobe and Quentin. We should be somewhere in the room, I guess. Yeah, nice. And they're all from this place, which gives you maybe a bit of a jump scare because you think we are like Ethereum guys. But it's really a university, kind of says Swiss university, something like that. Okay. And sometimes I had to cherry pick that a little bit here. It's actually ranked #1 in computer science in the world, okay? Did you know that? Okay. Nice, yeah. So we're working out of Zurich, and you can see here in the background the real Alpenglow, okay? So that's where the name comes from. So, okay, but enough chit-chat. Let's go into what really matters, which is performance. And I want to just say increase bandwidth, reduce latency. Let's look at these two things, what we want to have. First, let's go for bandwidth, okay? What we mean by this is basically how many transactions per second can we achieve, okay? I would say Solana is really doing very well with this metric so far, right? So you have Turbine, which is an excellent protocol, which just with erasure coding basically manages to use the network bandwidth that you have at the clients or at the peers as much as possible, and it's really cranking them up. Like on the other hand, on the other extreme, you have conventional protocols. They usually have like a leader, which is a bottleneck, which is a huge problem, or they do some sort of gossip, which is also kind of slow. So then we have, the newer DAG-based, directed acyclic graph-based protocols, which maybe don't quite get there where we can go with Solana. So what about Alpenglow? So Solana is already basically asymptotically optimal, so we can't do much there. We can do a little bit of details, so we get a little bit better here, but not much better. So not many promises. Let's go back. Reduce latency. What can we do here? This is optimized, but it's not yet fully done. So latency, Solana, you might see things like that. So it's like something like a 12.8 second time until a transaction finalizes. This is what we would try to minimize. What you also might have heard is that it has this optimistic confirmation. Like if you have enough votes for a block, then basically you can kind of be sure that the block is in. It's not fully sure actually, but it's sort of sure, and it's a bit of an apples and oranges, comparison here. So how about Alpenglow? So what we can achieve, what we show in simulations at least so far, is that we'll get a finality of about 150 milliseconds. Okay. Which is it's really top-notch, I would say. So, this is a median value, 150 milliseconds. It kind of fluctuates a little bit depending on geography. In many protocols, you would have to make this arrow much longer, and they're actually probably outside of New York. But let's say, what's the best competition we can have? Like, what are the fastest protocols right now? Like, some of them claim something like 400 milliseconds. So it's really, we will be much faster than all the other blockchains actually, which is, I think, great news. And this is self-reported, the 400 milliseconds by the competition, by the fastest competition. It's a bit, while these two are apple-to-apple comparison, it's a bit apple to slightly different apple comparison because, it's self-reported, so we don't quite believe everything that we have seen. And on the other hand, it also matters a lot how the stake is distributed. So maybe for Solana, it's actually somewhat favorable in that metric. But I'm still quite excited about this, that we will have a very fast protocol. And this is full finality, right? This is not like something you have to hope with. Okay, what else? So this is, really so much better. What else matters? Not just performance, but also security, okay? So I think we make a big step here, okay? So what we're going to introduce here, actually for the first blockchain, is what we call a 20+20 security, okay? So maybe you've heard of blockchains before, and you have heard that for some sort of Byzantine fault tolerance, you can at most get 33% security, whereas we kind of claim 40% security, and it's proven that you cannot get more than 33. So what are we doing here? So what we're basically doing is we're splitting security into two parts. We have real, like, Byzantine security, which means malicious attacks will not work. And we have security against other things, like non-malicious things that can happen, like power outages or crashes or all sorts of things which are not malicious. We kind of believe that malicious attacks are very rare, actually, in the real world. We don't really see them. We don't want to go for 33% malicious security because we hardly see it. Actually, usually malicious attacks can be, you can figure it out, right? You can say, well, you did this bad thing and we're going to punish you for it. So there's really no incentive to do that. But on the other hand, like people, having some hardware problems or whatnot, this actually happens in the real world. So we have up to 40% security for, like malicious plus benevolent, failures in some sense, which is a cool thing. And finally, keep it simple. So we want to have the simplest possible protocol, okay? Performance is number one for us when we develop a protocol, but simplicity is like important also. I have these little pictures here, some mistakes here, but it's essentially like what you see for SpaceX engines. They kind of made the new one simpler and it's still more efficient than the old one. So that's sort of what we're doing here. So that's the current implementation of Solana consensus on the left, and the new one will be really streamlined, very simple, but even faster. All right, for the next part, I want to quickly show maybe this meme video I have seen. So this is the Argentinian president kind of going over the ministries of Argentina and saying afuera to some of them, like he thinks they're not needed anymore. And we had this moment as well. So when we wanted to change the consensus protocol, we had a little afuera moment. And actually, that's our whiteboard with, let's say, 4 key protocols currently in Solana consensus, okay? So let's check what we still need, what we still have in the future. So first of all, there's the Tower BFT consensus protocol. We're not going to use it anymore, so it's going to afuera, okay? Then, well, this is maybe a bit closer to heart. Actually, we talked to, after a few weeks, when we kind of had the basic ideas ready, we talked to Anatoly, who onboarded us, and we told him, proof of history, would you be sad if it's gone? And he said, no. Get rid of it. And that's what we're doing. We don't have it anymore. So gossip, protocol which is used heavily in different parts of Solana. It can still be used, we don't mind, but we won't use it anymore. So we have just direct communication in the future. And Turbine, so this is, our heart goes out to Turbine, we really like it. For the purpose of talking to each other, we kind of had also changed Turbine a little bit, we gave it a new name, but it's essentially still what you have there. So we call it Rotor from now on, at least internally. I don't know whether it becomes external, but that's sort of the data dissemination protocol of the future. Then we looked a lot into the current literature on research on voting, which is the second part. So these are a few papers that we found that we liked very much, just state-of-the-art stuff, and we tried to make it better, okay? So we looked at what can we improve, what can we do with these, and so from these papers we developed Voter, the voting side of the protocol, okay? So Rotor and Voter, they rhyme, okay, but they're really like best friends. They match very well. It's like a match made in heaven, basically. So the data dissemination and the actual voting will work together very well. Good. Let's open the curtain for this part of the talk that I actually want to explain to you a little bit how it works in the future, okay? So, first Rotor. So Rotor is the data dissemination protocol. It's basically Turbine, but slightly changed. Let me tell you what the changes are. Well, maybe first, why is it called Rotor? So we have a turbine that's kind of this multi-layer engine, basically, and the rotor is just one part of that. Let's say one layer of that. And that's actually sort of where the name came from. And so Rotor just has a single layer. So with Turbine, you had a multi-layer tree. So the current block leader would send the data around to other nodes, and then the other nodes would send it to other nodes, and so on. You kind of have a tree. It doesn't have many layers, but it has more than one layer. We believe one layer is actually the better way to do this. So how it works is the leader prepares a block. The block is cut up into slices, like before. And then each slice is sent out, like in a pipeline fashion, basically by cutting the slice with erasure coding into shreds, okay? So we have the shreds, which are sent to the relays. And in our case, the relays, we just send the shreds to everybody else, okay? It sounds like a lot of work, but it's not more work than so far, because also so far, everybody needs to get the data, right? And so in the future, also everybody needs to get the data. So that's the relays. So you have this little, sun rays, basically, which just means one node sends to everybody else their shred. Like before, it's erasure coded in the sense that we just need to get a few of those shreds, let's say half of the shreds, to recombine the whole block at the receiver side. Well, that's very similar, actually. I think the main difference here is really that we have a single layer. What we could also do is we could have some kind of like multicast system there instead of the sun rays, that you really do the very naive thing that you say, I just send a UDP package to 1,500 nodes or something like that. So you can just do something like 00, for instance. It actually fits like a glove here, because it can just do a multicast. So you can also do both things together. You can say, well, I'm sending to all the nodes, and I'm also activating 00 for a multicast, and whatever arrives first comes first, right? There's no reason not to do both. Yeah, you might think that's a lot of work really to send this out, but it's much, much faster. This only takes a few milliseconds, actually, to send all the data out with the kind of lower bound of bandwidth we ask to have the nodes to have. So that's actually going to be very, very fast, much faster than if you had another hop around the world, which is almost like 100 milliseconds or something like that. All right, then there's a few more edits here in Rotor. One edit is, for instance, that we don't have these data shreds anymore. So far, it was always that we send the real block data and we send like the erasure coded version, the coded version of the data. In the future, it's just coded version of data, so that kind of the blue color here. And what we also plan is that this is in some sense the workhorse of Solana, right? So when you look at the bandwidth consumption, it's really that these relays or turbines so far should have the highest bandwidth consumption, because that's when all the data goes out. And the idea is to really reward that better than maybe we have in the past. Okay, so that's sort of the idea of the data dissemination protocol. If you know turbine, then it's very similar to that. It's not a big difference. What about Rotor? So this actually changes quite a bit. Okay, so on the surface it looks like before. Okay, on the surface we have basically a leader schedule. There are leaders taking turns, and they send out their blocks. Let's say every leader has 4 blocks that they send out, and then they hand over to the next leader. So that's something you know already. But proof of history is going to be gone. It's going to be history, I guess. And we're going to have timeouts instead. So how does this work? So when I say timeouts, it really means system timeouts, like a system clock which just checks, okay? So every node in the system, every validator essentially, is going to be like a little referee, okay? They gonna think when should they have the data received from the current leader, okay? So basically they start a little local just system timeout after receiving the last part of the last block. In the simplest case, I'm only going to present here the simplest case, but we can go into detail more later. And then they start this timeout and they say, by that point on this picture here, I should have received block B4, okay? And then they're going to vote on it. It's just either good or bad, okay? Either it was in time and it's correct, or it's something went wrong, okay? And they don't have much, they don't want to wait too long for this, okay? They really will make their vote by that. So they will send out their timeout by that, their vote by that point. We have these votes not just for the last block of such a window, but we have it for every block of such a window. The reason of this is that if some leader does not work at all already in the first block, let's say, of a window, then we can immediately kind of skip the leader. Okay, so if enough people would say this doesn't work, then it will be skipped. All right, so like before, like for the shreds, basically for the relays, these votes, let's assume this was fine, this block, this vote is going to be sent out like this. Again, to everybody, okay? This is even a shorter message. All our messages are actually very short. They all fit in a single UDP packet. And this is just a single signature basically sent to everybody. This takes almost no time. So if you send the vote out, again, like before, this is something we're going to reward. Yeah. And then, okay, so I just told you, everybody's basically a judge here. Everybody's a referee. Every node checks, did I get this block in time? And then it tells the others about this, okay? This is a bit of a big communication, but it's not that bad, actually. We did some math there, and it's much, much less than what we use for just a rotor or turbine. So let's say then you're on the receiving end, right? You send out your votes to everybody. You're going to receive all the votes from everybody else, right? Just shortly after that. You're going to look at those votes, and in the normal case, it will look like this, okay? So most of the votes, let's say the leader is currently a good guy, has sent the block in time, everybody's happy about it. You got a lot of yes votes, essentially, notarization votes. As long as we have at least 80% of these votes yes, and when I say 80% of the votes, I mean 80% of the stake representing these votes, saying yes, then this block is immediately final, okay? There's nothing, that's already it. There's no more than that. So at that point, for yourself, you can make a finalization certificate. You just put everything inside this certificate, all the votes you have seen that wanted to have this block in, and it's going to be final. You can show this certificate to somebody else. You can say, look, I have it final, and then everybody will accept that this block was in, okay? So that's the base idea here. So you're going to send out, you can send out this certificate if you like, and we do that. You might think the certificate might be huge because we have all these signatures inside the certificate, but it's not like that, okay? So we use BLS certificate technology, so it's again just a single UDP datagram. It's not more than that. So that's, again, very fast. And this is really essentially one round of voting, right? After you got the data, you immediately say, well, now I'm waiting for the votes. The votes is like one round. You just wait for 80% of the stake to tell you this is fine, and you know it's fine, right? There's nothing more than that. Doesn't even have to go into the blockchain anymore. Okay, so you can send this out again using multicast or directly. The other extreme of the spectrum looks like this, right? So most of the stake, in some sense, is unhappy about the current block. So they have a lot of downvotes there. Let's say you have at least 60% downvotes. You might say that's a bit, asymmetric, but that comes from the proof that we have for this paper. So if you have this case, then you say, I'm going to make a skip certificate. That's enough to say, this leader didn't do the job, it's going to be skipped. Okay. Again, if just you have enough votes, enough stake to vote, that will be fine. You send this out and it's done. You can see there's a bit of a gap in the middle, and that's what in some sense is a difficult part of consensus, right? We have to solve this gap in the middle to make it work. And I would say if you get something mixed, which is neither 60% no or 80% yes, it's a bit more complicated, okay? So it's kind of a mixed message here at that point. And, well, then I would have to go into more detail to explain you. But generally speaking, it's just one more round of voting that we have to do. The typical case would be that you get 60% upvotes, yes, and then you would say, okay, with this I'll send one more round of things, and then you can finalize also the block very easily, very fast, okay? Good. This is actually the whole protocol for voting, okay? So this is in our paper. It's basically these 2 pages which should explain in pseudocode, all the details here. First, I thought I should go with you guys one line after the other through this code, but I guess I'm not going to do that. So you're safe. But I would say, I would encourage you to look at this paper. It's a long paper. It explains a lot of things. It has actually proofs in it. So in the future, Solana will have a proof, right? We know that it's correct just based on the proof, which is something new. So go and have a look. I'll put on a QR code at the end of my talk, and then you can directly go there and see if you like. Yeah, again, Quentin and Kobe, the co-authors. Yeah, I want to finish with 1 or 2 more slides. So first, just some measurements we did, okay, how fast is this? So this is what we call a latency histogram. So let's say you're a leader in New York, okay? Currently you produced a block in New York. What we see on this histogram, maybe quickly show the 200 millisecond line here because it's a bit small numbers. And what we see here is the network delay, the network latency, okay? You can see on the very left of this slide, you see that maybe hardly behind the Statue of Liberty, there are some nodes which actually have 0 latency. This means they are also in New York probably, or very close to New York, okay? And then you see the stake of Solana currently, that we currently see, that it's some nodes at the very right end, at the last percentile, so to speak, they have a large distance, let's say, from this leader in New York, more than 200 milliseconds. And you can see, for instance, here, there's some more nodes in the US, let's say, first East Coast and West Coast, probably, or the middle. And then you see this plateau, which is kind of like the many European stake nodes we have, okay? And this is basically a lower bound of how good our protocol can get, okay? Because this is just the latency. This is how much time it takes to just send one bit to the other side, okay? Nothing more than that, nothing less than that. Now, we had our stages in the protocol, and the first part was the Rotor stage, right? And here is basically the bars, the yellow bars are how much slower Rotor is compared to this lower bound. And you can see sometimes it's not much slower, right? Like let's say for the nodes here in the middle, it just adds a little bit of overhead, which is kind of clear because now we have to send a full slice basically, right? It's not just a bit. So Rotor is very fast there. And then we have the other stages. The first stage is after Rotor, after you got the block together, you start the voting as explained before. And the 60% voting is an important part for us. Like if you have 60% of the votes, then we know that the block is notarized, as we call it. And that would start the finality. So the finality can go different paths. So one path is basically saying, well, if I get 80% of the stake voting yes, then I immediately have finality. I know that from before. If I have 60% of the stake, then I do one more round of voting, and then I will also have finality. Or it could be also the case that just somebody sends me the certificate that it's final, right? That's also fine. So all these three things are possible to get finality. And actually here in the blue line, where we get finality at the end, some nodes will do this, some nodes will do that in the simulation. It depends a bit where they are geographically. But you can see that the finality is actually very fast. So this is for a node in New York, starting a leader in New York. So this is almost 200 milliseconds, let's say, on the median, which is much more than I told you before. But sorry to say, unlike today, New York is not the center of the Solana universe, okay? So other places get below 150 milliseconds, and New York gets a bit higher than 150 milliseconds. So, but that's basically how it looks like. And you can see the overhead we have in the protocol is basically roughly a factor of 2 to the lower bound, right? And that's why we really are excited about this, that it's so much faster than what the competition does. Good. Let me wrap up here. So maybe one more slide, just a timeline roughly how this continues. So this is now the official reveal of Alpenglow. Talk about it would be great. Yeah. Then we have, thanks guys. Then we have, of course we follow the protocol as usual. Then will be a lot of testing probably. We work with all the partners which are implementing clients. They already started implementing them, but there will be a lot of testing to make sure that this all works as intended. And then at some point we'll ship, hopefully not die, I guess. Somewhat maybe towards the end of the year or maybe beginning of next year. Roughly that's sort of how we feel like it. All right, yeah, so then thanks again for listening. Yeah.
Thank you, Roger.
Yeah.
That was fantastic. Probably one of the most important talks we're going to hear today. And we're preparing to get ready for lunch. A quick question for you. As everybody in the audience is heading downstairs to have lunch, is there one aspect or one component of Alpenglow that might be the most interesting to talk about over a sandwich?
I would say connects, I give you a difficult answer, unfortunately, okay? I would say connects to probably many people in the room in different ways, okay? So think about how it will connect to you when this thing is coming, right? What it will change for you and your colleagues, and take it from there, I would say. I would also like to encourage you to just ask either Quentin, Kobe, or myself if you have more questions, or actually many of the people who already are in the know for this at ANSA or JUMP or whatnot. Yeah.
Great. Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Again, rock star. Come on. Here we go. Fantastic.